Hello, Copic in the Craft Room fans. It is Michelle Houghton here, and we are going to do a little holiday coloring today. I am using a Dare to Be Artsy stamp. This is the Poinsettia Tangle. So we've got these beautiful tangled poinsettia flowers, a smaller version that you could use as a center. They do make a die to fit both the outer and the inner piece of this. You might have seen on, if you follow my blog as well, I've done some flower things with the die from this, but you could use it with a stamp. We've also got a tangled holly piece leaf and then some wonderful sentiments. So that is the stamp I'm using. I have gone into my Copic Sketchbook, my small one, and I've heat embossed just the poinsettia in gold. So I've got this beautiful gold image, and now I've got all of my red Copics nearby, and I'm going to do some color testing off to the side, and I'm going to color this up. Because it's got all this beautiful detail with the tangle itself, and I'll get closer as I start working, but I don't need to do a whole lot with the actual detail work or shading. So I'm still going to be shading these kind of from light to dark, kind of from the tips a little bit lighter to darker in those center and down the vein of that, each petal. And I've got those small center pieces, but I don't need to do, I could actually come in and do sections of those doodles a little bit differently, but I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So really easy, fun, as much as anything, this is coloring for fun, but I could do something like this and put it on a card as well. So I'm going to zoom in, speed it up, and we will do voiceover and make sure you guys know what colors I am using. All right, so I'm going to start with an R32, and because I'm using reds, I'm not going to color in the petals all the way. I know I want the light to remain on the outer edge of the petals, so I'm going to the outer edge of each petal and coloring toward the inside, but I'm not filling it in all the way, keeping those colors nice and light because I know the red tends to do some bleeding. I am coloring right over that embossed surface. R35 is next, coming in toward the center of each petal. Hopefully as I get darker, it's going to define the edges of those petals a little bit more. So I'm just coming in from that lighter pink and working in toward the center on each of those individually. R37 is next. We're getting pretty tight in toward the center of each. Some of them you're pretty much going to have the white disappear on. But I'm coming right in toward that center vein that runs down each petal and right at the base of the petal, kind of where it goes into the center of that flower. R39 is last. And now sorry, it's not last. I've got one more, but I'm coming in right along the center vein. The white pretty much disappears off all of the flowers at this point. And I don't know if you can see this, but some of that gold is actually getting covered up at this point just because I'm using a little bit darker color. And remember, Copic's going to stick to anything, so it colors over that gold embossing. I'm going to go back to my R37. So notice I skipped one. I don't necessarily need every color. R32 is next. And I'm blending that together. So I've skipped a couple of those colors, but it's blending those colors pretty nicely together. And that's really all I'm looking for. I've realized with that R32 in particular, I've got a little bit of excess of the other colors that I picked up on my pink, or my red, so I brushed that off. I'm going to get in close so you can see this a little better. I'm going to use my colorless blender, and I'm going to pick up the Copic ink off of the gold. Now I've got my chisel nib so that kind of that flat edge rubs over the top and isn't getting down into the petals. But it's literally just picking up that ink so I can see that gold embossed surface now. And I'm rubbing that off on the side, kind of scrubbing off that excess red off my colorless blender. Y23 is going to do the base of that center. Y26 is going to go around just one kind of edge and the little C curve, and Y23 to blend those back together. I have a pretty big, I'm going to fill in some of the background. I won't fill in the entire page. But I've got a B06, so I'm working right up to that embossed line. What's kind of nice about an embossed line is it's raised, so you can kind of bump right up against it. Again, I've got my chisel nib out. A lot of times with backgrounds, that's the end I'll use because it fills in a bigger space a little bit quicker. And I can still get into those little corners with the corner of that nib. But it gets that surface nice and smooth, kind of working my way around. I'm using small circles, which is hard to see at this speed, but I'm using small circles, and I try to go over each area at least a couple times, 2 to 3 times, and that's what's going to help it smooth out. If I only did one pass with kind of even strokes, I'd probably still see those strokes. So B39 is next. It's a considerably darker color, but I've used this before, and it tends to blend together fairly well. So you can see, obviously, a really distinct line between the two right now, kind of dipping in. So there's just kind of a halo effect around that flower. Small circles. I did get a little bit of red on my paper from setting those lids down, and that's what those speckles were out on the side. B06 again, and I'm going to smooth those together. So you can see these colors actually blend fairly well, even though it's a pretty major jump between the two. And I like the effect of that real kind of bright blue up against the flower, going into that deeper navy color as you push out and away from it. And again, I'm just using my chisel nib on these to get that big space covered effectively and smoothly. It works pretty well. So for my sketchbook, I'm going to stop here. You can imagine this has got a ton of color bleeding through, and actually, I am thrilled. I just realized that I have a blotter page that I put in between, and I did not have it in between my pages that time. With all of that background ink, I don't have a single, I have tiny, tiny little bits of blue over here, but nothing on this image that I stamped. Good chance of seeing this guy next week. I am thrilled with that. That's a wonderful test for this sketchbook and paper. So this, again, just so you guys know, this is my Copic sketchbook. This is one that's produced in-house at Imagination International. So you can order them there, but wow. Okay, I'm excited. Sorry, that's a whole tangent besides what we're doing. But again, this was a Dare to Be Artsy image, tangled poinsettia or poinsettia tangle. And I embossed it, and I kind of took you through those steps of doing that coloring. And it just is a real pretty image. It has that wonderful gold sheen on it. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and I hope you are back next week to see more. Follow our channel so you can make sure to hear all the news about Copic classes. I will keep you updated, and like this video. That is always helpful to gather more Copic friends amongst us. If you haven't had a chance, go ahead and check out the Facebook page as well, because we'll have a lot of posts there about where things are coming up. And if you're not a Facebook user, the other option is going over to my personal blog, which is actually scrapweaver.com. I will put the link underneath the video post so that you have that. That's just another way to kind of watch what I'm doing or watch what's going on kind of within the Copic world. Thank you. Have a happy, colorful week.